8.9 Introduction. Welcome learners. In this session, we intend to teach to you how you can get acquainted with the product description screen, wherein we'll be having slight amount of design which we'll be having from the common product item widget. Then we will be adding a bit amount of descriptions to our product and also setting up a counter for buying an item, where you can have one particular item or multiple quantities of that item to be bought. All of that, how to do it from the very scratch, we're going to see in this video. Tune in into the session. Cut. Let's dive into the session wherein I'm going to show to you how we will be completing the design for our product description screen. Let's say this is the product description screen and I'm going to spend majority of the part of the screen to load my image. So that's going to be my product image. Let me just keep a space in between. What I'm going to next try and do is over here I'm going to put the product title, or in fact let me have that inside the description box, followed by the product description. That's going to be here. Next, I'm going to put the amount, let's say over here. And followed by a counter button that is going to be first showing up a plus symbol, followed by a number, let's say 3 quantities, and followed by the minus symbol. Now what we're going to try and do is this product description will try to somewhere fit over this side, and then at the bottom edge I'm going to have this counter, and this upper part of the screen, let's say over here, I'll have the pieces left. Yeah, that's going to be the design that I would be sticking to. So here I am on the product description screen. What I'll do is over here at the bottom half of the widget, wherein I'm going to have my counter. Let's say over here I'm going to start with product counter widget. So the class product counter widget is going to extend the stateful widget. Why stateful? That's because over here this number has to increment or decrement depending upon what button we want to tap. Now next is my product counter state, that is going to extend the state, and then I'll take the missing override and put over here one row. Let me stop this error by doing the missing override and putting the return statement here for my product counter state. As it is a stateful widget, kind of remember this, that it will return a state. Now look at the design that I would be following. I have got a bit amount of space followed by the plus button, followed by the minus button, and then a number in between. Let me first try designing this row, and I'll put my icon. In fact, I can try putting an icon button. Now the icon button will have icon as +1, or let's say I can just put a text button, and the text will be plus. Now I want to see how this thing will appear on the screen. So what I'll try and do is increase the font size to, let's say, 30. Now this text button is going to be wrapped in a container. Now how do I know that it is going to get wrapped in a container? That's because over here, look, it has got rounded edges. So I'll put over here decoration, box decoration, border radius dot circular, let's say 6 pixels, colors dot yellow, and then child to be my text button. Now I'm not very sure how this thing will appear, but I would surely want to see how does this actually look at the bottom navigation bar. Well, what's bottom navigation bar? Over here, if I try putting any component, it's going to appear at the extreme bottom of my screen. Hence, I'll try putting here bottom navigation bar, and I'll put my product counter widget. Now, upon running my app, I'm going to understand how this thing will appear on my screen. So here's my app. I'm going to click on retry, and I'm going to click on one of my products, and that's exactly my button. Well, what I would want to do is set the text color to black. And in fact, a bit I'm going to try increasing the font size for my icon. Yeah, that looks good. And now what I would want to do is a bit amount of more round I would want to have on my plus icon. Yeah. Now what do I notice? It's actually sticking to the bottom edge. Now I can try putting over here my padding widget, wherein I'll see, in fact I should put this margin, wherein I'll see that on all sides I need to have a 10 pixels margin. And yes, now it no longer stands to stick on the bottom edge. Now, keeping this thing in mind, what I'll try and do is over here have the counter variable. So the counter variable will be displayed on the text, and this entire screen let's see if it is going to have a black color background, then In the style, I'll mention the color of the text to be white. In fact, I should also consider increasing the font size to 30. Let's try and see how does this thing appear. And yes, it appears kind of good. What I'm going to next to do is copy the container and put it over here, just switching this to a minus sign. Yeah. Now what I'll try and do is when you press the plus, I'm going to increment the counter. However, I should also do set state. Now when it comes to minus, if the value of counter is not equal to 0, then I would do counter minus minus. So this check will kind of ensure that I'm not going to allow negative values to get displayed. Yeah, so I'll say plus, yeah, I can increment the count, and minus, I can decrement the count. Now look over here, what I'm going to try and do. In order to have the left side spacing, I'll put a spacer widget. Now, what do you notice? It just pushed and created an entire space over here. That's exactly what is the rule of my spacer widget. Well, this completes the part wherein I want to have the counter for my widget to be there. Now, over here, I can put a very small text message. How many pieces do you want? And this time I'll try to keep the font size to the minimum one. Yeah. The moment I do this, what do you notice? This going to the like it's trying to give the render overflow or render pixels overflow error. So how do I cater this? Well, that's going to be simple. I can wrap this in an expanded, and I'll see that this is going to have a flex factor as 1. Next, these all components is going to be part of yet another children, and then I'll have one more expanded with a flex of 2. So looking at the difference, what do you understand is I'm giving more preference to show up this, and I'm giving less preference to show up the text. How do you understand that? Look, the flex quantity or the flex value for how many pieces is just set to 1. On the other hand, this is expected to be double the size, and also what I have done is over here try to put the entire thing in yet another row. That's because this part is one row and this total part is yet another row. I would want to have the alignment to be set to text align dot center. Upon hot reload, yeah, this gets to the center. And what I can also try and do is not have the spacer. Yeah, so it comes near, and then to the main row I can see that I would want the things to appear on the center. Well, over here, I think well, what do I also understand is I can manage that thing with the help of an empty size box with a width of 20. Yeah. Now, what I can try and do is give center alignment to both of them, but that would be way too much. So let me just ignore the thing that this is going to be over here, and then over here, now when I do a hot reload, you notice this kind of a entire widget to show up. Now, this is just one part of the screen. Let's design over here my entire column. What I'm going to next do is copy the entire container that we had done into our list item widget, and then I'll try to put it over here. But this time, what we're going to try and do is wrap this entire container inside of a future builder. Why? Well, we are going to go to the API and get then the product details. So here's my future product repository, and I'll put hit server to get a single product. Now once we have the product details inside build context async snapshot, I'll have my product model snapshot. Well, how do I understand that over here I have to put product model? In this case, I'm going to look for the return model for my future function. Whatever I'm going to return the data type, that exact same I'm going to keep over here in the async snapshot. Now things are going to be easy, as few things like connection state to be equals to waiting, and whenever it is going to be that, I am going to show the custom loader. Next, if the snapshot has error, then we are going to return the display error widget, which will show the snapshot error dot toString. Else, what I'm going to try and do, if we have the data, then obviously we'll load this container with the entire product model. So I'll say current product equal to snapshot.data. Now let me just do the import for this and then try to see this entire part to be working. Now if you notice that it's getting overwhelming and I'm trying to do more steps at one single time, well, that's kind of intentional. I want you to think logically, and I want you to break this down when you're trying to practice on your own. Well, over here I'm not flaunting my experience. I'm just trying to see that in order to have your widget composition, you have to think according to this diagram and then start doing it at the back of your mind, and then you'll be able to also handle the scenarios as I am doing it. Well, with that being said, let me try running my code and check whether this container, which exactly was trying to show up on the product listing screen, gets displayed at this end or not. So I'm going to click on this and yes, it shows up. Well, in this case, I have a bigger screen, so what I can try and do is increase the size of the image. Well, in this case, I would want to have the stars along with the stack to be one part of the column. That is, according to the design, this part will be one part of the column. Now, the remaining part will be another piece of the column. Well, why is that the case? Now, do you remember I was saying that I want this part to be slightly bigger than the product title and the description? Well, look over here. Inside the column, I'm going to put one expanded. Now the expanded is going to have a flex of 1. Even this expanded is going to show the flex of 1. Now they both are 50-50 percentage. Let me have a look. Yeah, well, I kind of forgot to even over here remove the height and width of the image, and at this part I should actually keep the font color to be white. Otherwise, I'm going to stare at a blank output. And yes, so what do you notice? It shows this product description on top of my image. Well, over here it was supposed to load this title at the bottom part of the image. So why on earth has this thing got shifted upwards? Well, let's try and understand this. When it comes to the column, now the column is able to use this to expanded widgets, but the column now needs more space. Hence, at this point in time, I'm going to wrap it in something called as single child scroll view. Now when I do a hot reload, you get to see this error. That's because both these expanded widgets are now competing to get scrolled, and in fact using the maximum height of the phone that is possible. Well, in this scenario you have one option. Option number 1 is, you have two options. Option number 1 is this second expanded, you can change this and keep inside a single child scroll view. Well, what this would mean is this part of the screen where the product title and the description is there is going to start scrolling. Now if I do a hot reload, you'll notice this has shown up here. Now I can try setting up the font size and also the description. I'll set the color to white. Oh, I'll put over here an empty text. Let's say if the description is null, it's going to show up an empty text. Yeah. But again, this issue has aroused. So what I'll try and do is, instead of trying to fit this thing in every time, I'll try to reduce the height of my phone image, and I'll set this to 200. Well, that's kind of small. Let's set it to 500. That's kind of big. So I have to adjust somewhere between 300 to 350. So now we have to keep on playing with these numbers until we find the best possible combination. And yes, this kind of suits the appearance. Now, lastly, what I would want to do is, below this counter widget, I would want to have my button where I can place the order. So here I'll say column children, and I'll put my filled button. Buy now. Yeah. Now this over here, we have to set the main axis size to be minimum. And yes, so let's say if you want to increase the size of the button, now you can just wrap it in a size box, put the width as media query dot off, over here size dot width. And yes, it utilizes the entire phone width. Again, I want to reduce by 40. That's because it's sticking to the edges. Yeah, now I can play along, change the colors, and do everything that we have done in the last session. What will happen is, once you click on the buy now, that many quantities of the product will get selected and will create a success screen where we'll see your product has been ordered. But for that, I'm going to break into the next session. Cut. 8.9 Conclusion. Well, the description and in fact the detailing for the product description screen went slightly longer. In the next session, I'm going to talk about all the common components that we have completed into module 7 to be there on the module 8. In fact, I'm going to reduce the job by having those things copy pasted into this project. That's because once you have got through those concepts in the previous module, I don't intend to teach to you and bore you guys again and again. In that case, I highly recommend, if you have not watched those videos in module 7, just watch it before you land to the next session. Stay tuned and keep learning with Hoping Minds. Cut.